Greetings. This is Ndubisi Kekwe. Let me begin by thanking all members of Tekedia Capital for your partnership over the quarters. We truly appreciate the opportunity of working with you as we continue to support entrepreneurial capitalism in Africa and beyond. And of course, over the last few quarters, we've been looking at how to actually make it possible that we can mitigate risk as practically as possible. Because of, if our members have the confidence that at least their principal could be protected, that is the likelihood that they can actually support these companies at the early phases of their corporate existence. So what we have done here is to look at our data, and we are data people. And looking at our data, it turns out that there is a mechanism which will make it possible that we can actually practically mitigate risk at least on the principal invested. So let me walk you through some of the research works we have been doing in Tekedia Capital. We look at a lot of data, just like also looking at data that makes sense for us to invest in startups, looking at patterns as well as models, processes, system, the capabilities which are actually driving the efficiency on the utilization of factors of production, and how these companies can have the right positioning in the market so that hopefully they can deliver alpha for everyone. So here, let's assume that we have nine investors, investors one, two, three to nine. And then let's assume that we have startups company A, B, C, D, E. And let's assume that our members, investor one, is interested in investing in company D and is investing $20,000. And then come to investor A, is only also invested in company D, 20,000, and investor C looking at investing in startup A. So at the end of the day, for that cycle, for the specific cycle, investor A is investing a total of $20,000, and investor 4 is investing a total of $70,000, and investing in company B, investing in company E. So, and then the total money being invested, we've tried just to make this thing to reduce a lot of variables. Say, let all these startups receive $60,000. So that means for the 5 startups, we're going to have $300,000. So for each of these investors, we now look at what we call pull factor. Essentially, out of these 300,000, how much is individual investor contributing to that 300,000? So when we run the numbers, this is the number. So the total, of course, should be one. Now, let's say that the valuation of these companies is also the same, just for us to reduce the variables. And lay a $1 million post-money evaluation. And Tekedia is taking position of 6% in each of these companies because we're contributing $60,000 in $1 million business. It means that we're buying 6% of this company. So let's assume that after a few months, few quarters, few years, whatever it takes, this company has a multiple. In other words, it exited, it's acquired, it went through or through secondary. There's so many elements for exit. So let's assume that this one is sitting at 5, this one is sitting at 10 multiple, 35, 8, and 60. These numbers actually are very typical, and so this 60 is also typical. So there are all variations on how these companies have performed over months and over quarters. So the exit is 5 million, this is 10, depending on this multiple. Now, Tekedia Capital, let's ignore dilution. In other words, let's just leave that the percentage we have certainly is going to be diluted as a startup raises further fund. So if you ignore that, that means that 6% of these $5 million is going to give us the 6% of this. So this is going to be, after the exit, the portion Tekedia Capital is going to be given by these respective startups. So our profit in quotes, quote because there's so many things involved in profits, but let's just say that it is the total that the Tekedia Capital is getting minus the total money that we have actually invested in the company. So that means that subtracts this number from the total the startup is sending to us. So we have this number. Now, your payback factor, because of the 20% carry, you're getting 80% of that profit. What that means, we put this 80%. This is what we have now. So these investor, all the investors in company A are going to get this total number. All the investors in B, this is the total pool. C, this is the total pool, and up to E. So these are the numbers. Now, so from these numbers, of course, depending on the respective number investments each of our members, you can now work out this member contributed 30 out of the 60. So they multiply by this is the what the member will get, and then you do the same thing. So at the end of the day, of course, it's still going to come back to the total number that's available for sharing. So that's what is going on here. So at the end of the day, this is the total payback this investor is getting. This is for investor B, investor 2, investor 3, C up to 9. This is what he's getting. Nothing strange, nothing. This is just what we have right now. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Now, we want to say, let's assume instead of members taking 80%, let's assume that members are going to take 70 and leave 10% in a pool, just in a pool. Let's just keep it a pool, 10%. So instead of taking this 80%, each member, the members are taking for themselves individually 70%. So when you run that at 70, this is what you have. And then when you distribute it individually to all the members, this is also the numbers each person will take home under 70%. Now, what is going on here is that this is what we have currently. This is total payback have currently, which just summed them up. This is what the new model using 70 will give. So the delta is the 10% that is in between, because this guy would have, instead of getting 80 here, we're using 70. So you have this. If you now take this delta and multiply it by the pull factor, in other words, what has each person contributed in that pool of $300,000? You can now calculate that each person, irrespective of how he or she has played, this is the amount you are getting. So investor A, based on the pull factor he has here, 0.067, is going to get a payback of 43,200. And this is separate from the 70% or whatever, depending on the company's investor. This is basically a general pool that, irrespective of the performance individually, which each individual member has already received here, but this is now a general pool of 10%, which every person is releasing to be shared among all members. So at the end of the day, this is how everything is going to be distributed. So at the end, this person is getting a payback of 43,000, while the total invested, that means the person takes home 23. The person is getting 64 when invested 30,000, is taking 34. This person is getting, interestingly, 194 when invested. So at the end of the day, what you see here is there is no person that will lose money, because the total payback for each person is actually more than the total invested. Of course, you are sharing 648,000 based on the pool factor when the total money put in is 300,000. So every person actually gets something that is more than the principal. So in this case, we can say that the principal is actually the risk. The principle is actual, and this sensitivity analysis, if we model it, let's assume that instead of course, if you use this as 60%, that means that we are taking a pool of 20% into the whole community. Now, you see, the numbers even go better. So it's vesting 20, is getting 86, but of course, individually, you are losing 20% that you would have made, because you're supposed to keep the 80%, but you're dropping 20% to ensure that no matter what happens, nobody loses money. So, of course, just to also show you that mathematics is right, if you put this 80%, this is going to go to zero, because there is nothing that is open for anybody to share. Just to let you know that amount is actually solid. So you don't have any payback because each person is taking the full 80% as based on the current model. So, and let's assume that we keep it 70, which we think is reasonable. You can see it. So each person outperforms the principal. And this is irrespective of the fact that individually anybody can get anything here based on this, but here we are ensuring that. So this is a very significant model, and this is something that next in 2023, as we have our first meeting, as we look at our companies, we want you to think through this over the long holiday during the Christmas period. Think if this is something you would like to vote for, because if it's something you would like to vote for, when we reconvene in February 2023, we would like to see if in our contracts we will open up an opportunity for somebody to say, I want to participate in the general pool. So maybe instead of the 80%, you get 70, the 10 goes into the pool. Tekedia Capital is not going to participate in that 10%. This is just mainly for members. We are fine with our carry of 20%. That one is that is there. So this is really just to make sure that our members are not going to be affected by any kind of risk on their principal. So if you also model that instead of having, let's assume here that we have 30, you can still see that the sensitivity analysis is still very, very solid. That so all we just need in a cycle is to have the opportunity of getting 30x, 30x to, of course, in all the cycles, we have actually had companies that returned 60x. We've got companies that came around $1 million today. They are worth more than $50 million, neglecting dilution, of course. So we do believe that this is something that we could consider.